we know you, we trust you, but we can't automatically trust every single request you make because it's entirely possible that you clicked on the link, right? And then therefore the request coming from your machine isn't actually coming from you.
Zero trust has become one of the most talked about concepts or buzzwords in cybersecurity. But what does it actually mean? To a majority of people who thinks that this is very far away and there's no chance I'll get hacked, and the idea that you need to verify everything seems like so foreign, and maybe only something that the big companies need to worry about. But I'm sharing with you today, and the panelists as well, there's something nearer and there's something relevant for us to think about on an everyday basis. So let's dive into the buzzwords and look into the implementation. Today's topic will be on zero trust, and we have three esteemed guests, Tim, Ron, and Joel, that's going to share with us on this topic.
So I'm Tim Nan from digiDations. We help customers answer a simple but yet uncomfortable question. How will our defenses actually function in front of today's latest threats? So we do this with an AI native platform that collects intelligence, runs simulations of attacks in customers' environments, and help them identify where those gaps are, and obviously to improve those defenses.
Hi, I'm Ron. Basically, I'm the founder of AgileMark. We actually focus on the human psychology of security, the behavioral science of security, which has been largely ignored for the last many years. And besides the technical control which the industry peers are doing, we want to help the organization cultivate a better security culture and make people behave more cyber safe.
Yeah, hey guys, Joel here from a company called Protos Labs. Basically, the problem we solve is that there's a growing number of cyber threats, both in scale and sophistication, both traditional cyber attacks and also AI-powered cyber attacks now. But globally, what we see is there's a shortage of skilled cybersecurity analysts, right? I think the World Economic Forum says there's something like 4 million unfilled cybersecurity roles. So specifically what we do is we build AI agents that function as junior cybersecurity analysts in a space called threat intelligence, meaning to say analyzing large amounts of threat data to help companies identify patterns, find out actionable intelligence to be able to inform their defensive strategy. Yeah.
Okay, so today's topic is on zero trust. Can I invite the guests to maybe share from your own perspective what the definition of zero trust is? Start with Tim.
Sure. I think zero trust, as the name suggests, pretty simply is do not have inherent trust. So to understand this better, we start, what do we have before that, right? Traditional security models are based on different levels of trust, inherited based on who you are, where you are, and what you have done in the past to authenticate yourself. What zero trust basically says is at every single access point, when I try to access something, I want to make sure you are who you say you are. I do not inherit the fact that I'm in the office, therefore I'm trustworthy. If I'm out on the internet, then I have to challenge you more, right? We see that where now we have MFA, things like that, but we don't need that if you're in the office, right? That's the more traditional model. And zero trust implies that we're going to apply the same security controls and checks no matter where you are, who you are.
There's also the aspect of the human behavior. So we also do not trust that the human will behave properly, right? In the ideal world, everybody will conform to the company policy. So what are the ways for us to make sure that the person will behave as what we expect? Or what does the security policy advise them to do? We won't use the word mistrust. You will only be trusted until you are proven you are the right entity to access the resource.
Do you all foresee that for somewhere in the future, that zero trust will be working in the background where usability would improve tremendously? And the other thing is regarding trust. The question is trust of who? Because in any single application on context, there are so many of these parties that's involved. This trust of the application developer, the trust of the supply chain. There are so many layers of trust that we're talking about, right?
Something that came to mind as I'm listening to Joel as well is like zero trust is actually a philosophy or a way that we approach the world, right? If you think about it, in the world today, there's so much scams, right? So for example, if my son sends me a video chat asking for money, do I inherently trust this connection, this video, because I visually see this is my son? Or do I actually have to verify, right? So I think in the long run, zero trust, as it gets developed, will become part of our way of life.
Zero trust itself, there's a few aspects of where we actually handle this. There's the technical controls part, where we try to make sure that we don't trust anybody, we control and validate every single person, no matter who you are and where you are. In the human psychology side, we are also trying to make sure that you understand that you're not supposed to do data leak, or you're not supposed to take data without authorization. The simple fact is that you have a monitor screens with all the data. You are aware that you are not supposed to actually copy the data out. But what does most people do? They use their handphone and take a snapshot of it and send it over to their friend. It's a very common type of a misbehavior. When we put a zero trust, everybody now is familiar with multi-factor authentication, where you use your handphone to put in extra verification. That's one of the instances of, it's not that we don't trust you, we want to make sure that there's an additional valid kind of authentication to ensure you are who you are.
Maybe Joel, you want to take up this topic and then continue to explore it further from an agentic AI perspective.
In essence, in principle, I think there's a trade-off when it comes to security. Yeah, so people typically, I kind of learned this many years ago in school, right? So there's a triad, there's a trade-off between security, cost, and also convenience. Trying to balance this in that triangle is the difficulty, right? So like you said, it's so inconvenient. If it's going to cause so much friction in the day-to-day operations, then people will naturally try to get around it, right? But one way to be able to make security a bit more effective is to make it barely noticeable, right? So it means it's invisible. You can have a very convenient solution, but it could be very insecure, for example, right? So I think that's like a classic sort of trade-off that we need to have. Whether AI agents can directly help in zero trust, I think from a data analysis point of view is possible. So for example, being able to ingest real-time sort of this kind of authentication information, or just basically streams of data, right, that otherwise a normal human being wouldn't be able to consume and analyze just because of human cognitive limitations, right? Now AI agents can assist a human being to be able to be his wingman, his army of specialists to be able to do some of this real-time analysis work. That is, in theory, could be possible.
So I think for me, from perspective of what Ron and Joel has shared, right, actually we are still very early days in zero trust. I also know that from my conversations with other people in the industry, right, that some don't even believe in zero trust at all. And to me, those are tensions, like what you said, there's a gap between what is there in the market and, for example, usability. So in there's space for a lot more innovation to happen. So personally, I'm waiting for the day where, it will be so convenient. I think that opens up a whole new area for which cybersecurity companies can exploit, and there are many tools that we can further develop. So from your perspective, what kind of tools you think could be created in this space?
There's a whole lot of layers of tools there. So I'm just going to name it in terms of very high level. There's the technical controls. That means all the technical tools like your normal antivirus firewall, things as this. These are what we're familiar with. There's the other part about the human psychological control, which I think CSA, they're doing a lot of scam awareness, etc. Right? So this is the multifaceted of security or the cyber world we're facing. You have brought out a very important point, things like deepfake. We are chasing against something that's improving, right? We have detection technology, but the creation is also improving.
Zero trust is a security strategy, is a principle, but what's the attack against it? Zero trust is one of the concepts in a whole series of defenses. It could probably help, but the attacker is not coming to the organization and saying, I'm trying to launch a zero trust attack to attack you. He's just trying to get to an objective, right? And most of the time, you will then land back on the issue of identities and, like to your point, right, verification, right? The other interesting thing philosophically, if I think about it, is that if today proximity could be reduced, actually verification is easier. Right, so for example, if like Ron was sitting next to me, it's kind of hard for him to scare me, right? I can look at his face, I can check most of these things, right? And then how then do we reduce sort of like the physical proximity such that things can be verified through our 5 senses, maybe what you see, you touch, you hear, right? And then that can be a form of a multifaceted control, in terms of verification. Because now if you do single, like you do voice, people can fake voice. But if you layer on a few different like human 5 senses in one, maybe it could help as well, yeah.
So I got a light bulb moment just now, actually, when you were talking about this. The proximity part, of course, we know it's impossible to do human-wise. But through the agentic AI technologies, I think it's possible. An idea of a zero-trust agentic AI co-companion is always there for you to consult, for you to reach out. And then, behind the scenes, there are pathways to verify, etc., etc. I think it's definitely something that's workable. The thing is this, okay, the Air Force has this thing called zero accident. Right? It's a philosophy. The whole idea behind it is that there's no way that you can 100% prevent it, but it's a mindset issue, all right? And one of those things that's very crucial to this mindset issue was the fact that actually there's open reporting. But today we don't see it cybersecurity. The fact that the whole industry can open report and say, hey, sorry, I may have an issue here, or you may have an issue here, or they may have an issue here in terms of technology development. Okay, the day that we can do that, I think we will have matured tremendously as an ecosystem, as an industry. When the incident happened for me after I clicked the phishing email, right, I went to install Bitdefender just to get a peace of mind. But at the same time, I was sleeping, I'm thinking, oh, actually I don't know whether this machine is even trustable or not anymore. But yet work has to continue. Those are the conundrum that the users are facing on the ground, all right, day to day. Right?
I think we're looking at two different perspectives. You're looking at it, or two different angles. You're looking at it from end user perspective, right? From a organization perspective, we know you, we trust you, but we can't automatically trust every single request you make because it's entirely possible that you clicked on the link, right? And then therefore the request coming from your machine isn't actually coming from you. One of our key philosophies is around trust but verify, right? And so therefore, in our solution is looking at how do we help customers run those simulations, right? How do we simulate your user being hacked? We ask the customers basically verify everything we do. Right, so philosophically, I think this is the way that we have to look at security solutions as well as user behavior.
Actually, just now when you mentioned about the company losing a lot of data, that's one point which I always want to address, given there's a forum and opportunity. A lot of people always ask us, what happens if I lose my credentials? Why is it so important? Why does the news always like to report it? To them, they don't have a feel. But we call there such a thing called identity theft. So many years ago, right, when some banks lost their credit card information, the first question my friend asked, so what, it's just a credit card? I changed my credit card. No. The information they lost includes your mother's maiden name, your address. It's easy for you to change your password. Try changing your mother's maiden name. Right? That was actually a verification technique. So when all this information get lost, the way to verify a consumer is being affected. The company is left with lesser and lesser way to verify who you are.
So I know that you all are experts in your own rights, in your own context. You all have developed solutions. You all know what the issues are. Perhaps it's time to also now ask that from a solutioning perspective, right, and the customers that you've engaged, the business context, what is it about that Zero Trust could you further illuminate? Maybe I start with Ron first.
Just now when I was talking, and I think you mentioned about the usability between security and usability. So as the security knowledge in the industry is a very tricky thing, and we have business people who don't fully comprehend security. So among our peers, when we create a product, it's very difficult for us to balance. There's a timeline that we need to roll to market. There's a kind of security we need to inbuild to make sure trust is being there. But introducing over controls or too many kind of layers, it stops the usability. Business couldn't flow. So, but without the practical knowledge, it's very difficult to design.
Another big aspect of Zero Trust is about knowability. We assume that we know everything. Actually, I tell you, we don't know everything. So one big aspect is knowability, right? We still do not know a lot. The adversaries will be working on the seams between known and unknown. And this is where the greatest danger is, correct?
It is about understanding the context, right? Yeah. For example, we work with a pharmaceutical manufacturer. From their perspective, a compromise could just mean change of dosage. Without a context and understanding the implication of that dosage change, the drugs being produced could be lethal. Right, but yet from an IT perspective, nothing is wrong, right? They simply change the instruction. All of the inherent trust will still be there. And what Zero Trust comes into here is to say, well, why am I receiving, a change of dosage, right? So I think this is where I think what I was saying earlier is we need to look into a more better understanding. This is where AI comes in, right? To better understand the instructions, the intent, and then that's always been the hardest part of security is understand intent.
Do you foresee a day that agents can do that?
Recently, we did some research on this particular metric called Tool Utilization Index. With the amount of tools that we have, whether it be IT or OT security controls, the amount at which the tools in a normal enterprise environment is being utilized is probably about 10, 15% of it. So you actually are buying more and more tools, but actually the way that you leverage its data and its insights is minimal. Is this a human problem? For example, is it we are not having enough human bodies to look at these tools or to use these tools, right? For example, one person can only log into so many different tools a day. And how then do you increase utilization to maximize the ROI of a security stack? The key there is, are we making good use of the current data that we have to get the visibility, to get the knowability? My gut sense is we're probably not. We can do a lot more with what data we currently have before looking even at the sort of like unknowns and things like that, yeah.
For us to be successful and become more secure, we need zero trust, but not as a technology, right? But as something, a way of life, right? That we embed it into how we think. I think it's very interesting. That's something we sort of glossed over. When I see something new, I don't just look at, well, how does it work? What does it do? My first reaction is, how do I abuse it? Or how is somebody going to abuse
That's from
it?
a perpetrator's perspective.
Right, exactly, right.
Yeah,
And so that's how we want to look at it in terms of understanding how we want to secure it.
There's always this question out there, and I think it's brought up by one of the guests here as well. The question is this, there's so many things to hack in the world, why hack me, right? Perhaps, we can spend some time to talk about this.
The real reason to hack a SME is not for whatever you have, it's to use as a launch pad to hack other people. If the security defender, we trace you back to somewhere in maybe, let's say Jurong or Bukit Batok, one small little provision shop over there, it's up to you to prove that you are not the one attacking. It's easy for any perpetrators to clean up their trail in the SME organization, if you're not protected, and use you as a launchpad to hack other banks. Whatever investigation will end up at you. And if they clean up their trail properly.
I mean, those contexts already existed, right? And we know there are many. But not actually with AI. I mean, you are assuming that the perpetrators are interested to hack you. I'm telling you, they're not interested at all, right? They're just running the AI all around globally to see what they can get. As a result, they don't care, all right? As a result, I think we are all vulnerable.
There is no intended target. They're just seeing who can they get access to.
And we have the term phishing, what we call it phishing. You're not picking up particular fish. You're picking up whichever fish that bite the hook. Yeah.
I think the security world, there's this concept called threat-informed defense, a pretty new concept, right? A couple of years ago, I was a consultant to a global bank where they rolled out a threat-informed methodology. We did a very interesting exercise where we begin to profile why would an attacker attack a bank, right? And we begin to realize as we speak to the business, and we did a workshop for what are the threats that would target you, it was always linked back to what was the business priority. So for example, in corporate banking, the kind of key systems they used were payment systems, right? SWIFT systems, for example. So actually what they were worried about was potentially an attacker coming in to cause a loss of funds kind of attack, steal money. We applied this same lens and when we went to private banking, actually they say we don't have any large payment systems. Our business is a relationship-based system. It's ultra high net worth individuals. They talk to us, they do business with us. So what then will you be concerned about? Actually, when you break it down, they're actually more concerned about things like loss of data, right? What if I lose this rich client's data? What will happen? The borrower will not trust me, will not do business with me. So quite interesting. So this whole threat-informed thing, in a way, speaks to who will attack me. Actually, it really ties back to what's your core business and what the attacker might be after.
My mind just triggered one question. The masses are vulnerable. Are there practical ways in which they can take in order for them to protect themselves, given that most of them actually have limited budgets, whether it's an individual or SME for that matter?
I think let's start with SME first, right? So it depends on how IT system is important to your core business. That's the way you measure, right? What we actually measure is that if your IT system is the way you run your entire business, have at least what we call the basic three. Have a firewall, have an antivirus, right? And then I'll have some basic MFA. Microsoft is a part and parcel of it. There's a very cheap firewall out there. You just need to hire someone to configure. It's a one-time thing. Antivirus is continuous. That's the most basic you can do. And when the worst thing happens, always have a backup. Always have a backup of your system. You cannot be lazy on that. There's two ways a hacker will cripple a company. Either they cripple your entire IT system or they steal all your data. The backup will not help you steal all your data. Encryption will sometimes help you a bit, but the backup will help you to at least you can restore your system.
Also, there are a lot of room for creativity and innovation, right? So maybe Tim, you want to talk about how BAS could help be one of these tool set in the future?
So I think how I see this potentially manifest, right, is basically potentially, we could look at a end user facing or at least a SME facing tool that basically says, I identify myself to you. We take on the knowledge that we have and we can actually structure it to be able to produce a one-time report for the customers. First, help customers, regardless of size, understand what is your attack surface, right? If we know you're going to be compromised, how are you going to be compromised? And then that allows you to be able to focus on, okay, what do I need to improve?
Yeah, going back to your point, why we actually AgileMark, what we start doing is this. There's a lot of careless behavior. So about security awareness, something as simple as when you are in the public Wi-Fi, is all your security controls up or up to date? You go to some airport, you go to this. So we create constant reminder. It's like a nudging. So that's why we dabble into the part of human psychology or the behavioral science of security, right? So this is the part which, unfortunately, we don't have a package for the smaller one, but we can think about it and see how we can actually work together with the industry to come up with something. Yeah.
Obviously, you're not going to forget Joel because he's big in the agentic AI. I'm sure that is part of the game as well, right?
Yeah, so I think on the individual level, I feel it goes back to a cost consideration, right? I think it will be what is good enough. Probably individuals are not there to buy the best of breed solutions. They're just probably there. I mean, if Defender is good enough, then why not, right? So, and I mean, nobody would say that Defender is not good enough, so it's also quite difficult. On the baseline, so I think like what Ron mentioned, things like antivirus will probably be useful. Backups as well. I think we need to think a bit more from like, how do I ensure continuity of my life, right? Yeah, so that's probably the better lens to, I mean, can you steal my data, can you steal my money? Yes, you can, but just your life needs to firstly be able to be restored if something were to happen to you. Yeah.
This one triggers a very interesting thought since we're talking about zero trust, and the cost is an extremely important consideration. Now we know some of these tools out there are expensive because they're operated by big vendors, all right? So the related point really is about open source cybersecurity tools, and I think there is a lot of potential in there. How to engage the users or the businesses as they are onboarded on this journey of cybersecurity. The next step would be getting them to start communities, either of sharing or even practices. In my mind, when I was discussing this, right, how did all the open source tools actually started? To mobilize the global communities to do more, coming up more than just being a user. What do you think is the possibility, or is this too idealistic a vision?
No, I think the open source community is huge, right? I mean, most practical things, antivirus, even firewalls, there are open source versions, right? But the inherent problem with open source in many applications is support, right? Is that the solutions can be leveraged by highly technical, proficient professionals. It's not just intellectual property, but also the ability to support customers and adopt it and make it easier to use. But if you look at the gap, where's the gap? The gap is not everyone is proficient enough, right? So for example, at one point in time, we had people's job is to be a phone operator, right? Today, do we train people on how to use a phone? No, because it's become common knowledge, right? So as sort of technical proficiency, if you will, cybersecurity awareness become commonplace, then more and more people will be able to use open source solutions.
So maybe a slightly different perspective. I mean, we are a venture-backed company, so we understand how investors think, especially institutional investors. Typically, the guys who start with open source is really because in the early stages of growth, they do want to get user adoption. Because that drives primarily valuation metrics in early stage startups. It would be great, I mean, if one day, let's say, a security community practitioners worldwide agree that for every security tool there, we will only support vendors that have one free community edition because we want to help the masses, right? Then, well, sure, then corporates could take the lead on that, right, for example, right? So, I mean, yeah, sure, we'll buy enterprise grade, but in order for us to work with you, you must have one edition that is for mainstream people, I think.
Based on what Tim has already said, open source, the trouble is actually support. Eventually, technology knowledge will catch up. Eventually, cybersecurity, we hope, will be like road safety. How do we actually implement controls to keep nudging for better behavior? And same with open source kind of thing. It's easy to implement, difficult to support.
So we have said so much, and then we heard so much valuable perspectives from all the different speakers, right? What is keeping you awake at night? And what do you think portends for the future of cybersecurity?
Relevant to today's conversation is the potential mistrust we place in AI, right? I mean, we're seeing the vast adoption of AI, probably faster than most technologies in the past few years. Even for us, right? We leverage AI quite significantly, but the way that we have to safeguard it is, while we can use AI to automate and expedite what we do, we always have, at this point, human experts to verify. But I think my worry is the fact that there isn't enough of that happening in the world, right? Is that customers are going to be relying on processes that produce products without really understanding how that happened and what inherent vulnerabilities and risk associates.
But I think Singapore, we are trying to do with the AI governance, etc. Hopefully, we get a better adoption of that and people realize what they are jumping into while implementing the things.
Yeah, so I think AI is not going to go away. Instead of saying like AI-powered cyber threats, I think there's going to be a data explosion. And for me, I think what makes sense then is that how do we then deal with having enough eyes to be able to analyze that kind of data? The needles are in the haystacks, right? And so are the insights, and the goal is also in all that noise. So I think really is how do we keep up with both the collection and the analysis and that making sense of that data so that we can provide better security.
So we have spoken a lot. There are so many perspectives that's been shared. Actually, the question is this: what would be one piece of advice that you would want the audience to take away?
So I think the key word I think we have heard everyone latch on is MFA, right? Now, MFA is multi-factor authentication, and for those who may not be very technical, there's actually a key MFA mechanism that everyone here in Singapore uses, which is SingPass. Right, and basically because when you use it to authenticate yourself, you're providing both identity as well as typically biometric, right? And so I think this is something that can be implemented into all of our workflows, all of our systems, our lives, personal and work-wise.
I couldn't agree more with Tim. So basically, we come to a conclusion: easiest, one single way, multi-factor authentication.
If you're an enterprise, firstly, allocate a budget, and the way that you do that for whether zero trust or any security tooling is to first identify who may potentially attack you. It doesn't have to be too complicated, because once you have a very attacker-informed lens, you will then know how to buy what is necessary to protect yourself.
My deepest pleasure to have had the three of you be sharing your perspective with us. There's so much ideas and insights that have been generated. So I really look forward to the next session with all of you. Thank you, Tim, Ron, and Joel, for your time today. I'm sure all of us have some takeaways from our conversation today and better understand the concept of zero trust. If you've enjoyed watching this, do follow CRPO on LinkedIn and YouTube for more of such content. Thank you very much.